Hello everyone, it is Ryan here on the Syntax Byte. Today I'm going to be bringing you another tutorial on Three.JS, as my last one was quite popular. In this video, it's the first video in a video series, but in this video we're going to cover orbit controls. Orbit controls are not technically part of Three.JS, but they kind of come with the library. I'll show you how to get access to them. They provide a ton of functionality, including touch controls, really quickly and easily into your project, so you can go from a static cube to a cube you can navigate around really quickly. But we're not just going to be navigating around a cube in this video. Not only am I going to show you how to use orbit controls and configure them so you actually get behavior that's desirable, although they work pretty good out of the box, but I'll show you a few of the settings to change up the behaviors as you see fit. This is the first video in a video series where I'm going to be covering a variety of topics on Three.js in the context of progressing towards a checkers game. So I'm going to be covering the orbit controls in this video. We're also going to create the checkers board real quick. In the next video, I'm going to be covering Blender importing models. So we're going to make a little checkers piece model and import that into our Three.js program. As well, I'm going to be covering ray tracing as well for selecting and moving the pieces. So you can look forward to at least those 3 videos, and from there we'll kind of see where we're going to take the program. But in this video, we're going to do the orbit controls. So you'll see some code is on my screen. This is very similar to the Three.js documentation. So I'm going to go over it very quickly, but I figured we could have this on the screen so we can just kind of dive into the orbit controls, the subject of this video. So, all right, my Firefox is unable to connect. When you are working with Three.js, if you're new, because it's WebGL, lots of browsers won't just load WebGL from a static file. So I know normally when you're doing web stuff that's static, doesn't have a server backend, you don't actually need a server. But in this case, you need one. So what you can do, I have the Ubuntu thing here. But if you don't have Ubuntu, as long as you have Python on your computer, what you can do is you go into the terminal. I'm going to use Ubuntu again. Like I said, do this with Python 3. You can use a Python 3 installation, Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever it is. Do Python. In my case, I need to specify Python 3, but yours might just be called Python -m http.server in the directory that your code is. So I have 3 checkers video. It'll say it's listening on port 8000, and if we refresh, there's my Three.js program. So like I said, I've already gone ahead and put the cube in the scene. That's all it does. There's no controls. We can't do anything. We're just looking at a static cube. So it's basically the same as the documentation. I've got a camera. We're filling the whole browser window. The basic stuff. And I've got a cube that I've put in there with a mesh basic material, which doesn't respond to light. And we've added it in there. We've moved the camera so we can see it, and we've told the camera to look at the center. That's pretty much it. So, as I said, this is the first video in a series of videos on creating a checkers game, but we're going to be covering orbit controls. Now, before we cover orbit controls, maybe we could have something a little bit more interesting than a cube to orbit around. So if you're with me on that, let's go ahead and create a quick checkers board, and then we'll dive into the orbit controls. If you have no desire to look at the checkers, how we do the checkers board, no problem. If you're just here for the orbit controls, just skip ahead a couple minutes in the video, and then we'll be getting right into the orbit controls. So for the checkers board, what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to use a series of different colored boxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my square here, which is already named for a checkers square, and instead of making it 1 tall, I'm going to make it 0.1 tall. So this should give us like a little checkers box thing. And that's my light square. So then I'm going to go ahead and call that material my light square. And I'm going to have a dark square. So I'm going to do const dark square. And the only difference between the light squares and the dark squares is obviously their color. So I'm just going to have a different material for my dark squares. I'm going to use 0x6a4236 because I'm a hexadecimal master who just knows all these colors off the top of my head. No, I figured that one out before the video. Thanks for asking. Okay. So now we have our light square, dark square material. We have our little cube thing. what we probably want to do is we actually want to create a loop, which is going to allow us to create a group of these. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say const board is equal to new 3.group, and then to this board we're going to add down here I'm going to say board, we're going to add all our squares. And so basically what I'm going to do is it's going to be a 10 by 10 board because I know checkers can be played on 8 by 8. That's how I would have preferred to do it, but the library we're going to use later in the series to actually sort of run our checkers for us, because this video series is about Three.JS, not checkers. So we're just going to use a library for that, but it does 10 by 10 checkers for whatever weird reason. So we're just going to move forward with 10 by 10 checkers. So we're going to do a nested for loop. We're going to do x is equal to 0, x is less than 10, x plus plus. Remember, all our boxes are 1 by 1, by 0.1, but 1 by 1 on the x and z axes. So then we're going to do for let z equals 0, z less than 10, z plus plus, and so basically I've generated myself a set of coordinates. Now what I want to do is I want to say let cube, and then I want to say if z is modulus 2 is 0, basically if we're on an even row, then we want to do cube equals new 3.mesh with the square, and we're going to pick the material. So we're going to do x modulus 2. If so, light square, else dark square. So basically, are we in an even row? If yes, are we in an even square? And if this is no, all we're going to do is we're going to switch around what the light square and the even square are, right? So we just go like this and light square. Okay, so this is going to result in a nice little checkerboard for us. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set the position on the cube. So cube position dot set x 0 z. Okay, so we're not changing the y position, but we're going to set it to the x and z. And then we're going to do board dot add cube, and then obviously we're adding the whole board to the scene. So let's see what that does. Apparently nothing. Dark square is not defined. So make sure when you're coding, guys, that you do everything correctly. And there's our checkerboard. So we can't really see it super well because we're looking at like the center of the screen, and it kind of builds outward from the origin point. So this here is like 0, or like this here is 0, 0, 0, right? And it sort of builds the board out. So we'll fix it kind of with our orbit controls. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add the orbit controls now so that we can actually move this viewpoint around. And so how you do that is I'm using the CDN here. If you are not using the CDN, what you are going to want to do is you are going to want to go to the Three.JS Git repo on GitHub and download it from the same folder that I'm linking it from. It's going to be under 3 examples JSM controls orbit controls.js. If, like me, you are using the CDN, then you just link it. So here we do HTTPS. We can basically just copy this first part, 3, but then instead of build, we're going into their examples folder. Examples, JSM controls / orbit controls.js. And so what this is basically there's a folder called controls. You can find other pre-made controls. So if orbit controls isn't what you're looking for, but you feel like your pattern is common, you may be able to use one of the controls from there. Bonus is that they're all really easy to read because they're not minified and they have good comments. So even if one of these isn't exactly what you're looking for, you may be able to get some hints in how to create what you want, or even adapt what you want from them. We're going to go with the base orbit controls today. So, orbit controls. We found it. How do we get it into our project? What do we do? So under here, where I have camera look at, we are going to do controls equals new orbit controls. We're going to pass that our camera and our renderer dot DOM element. Okay. That should be basically all we need to do to get the orbit controls doing something. Maybe it didn't like that. Cross origin blocked. Oh, double HTTPS. What am I doing? See? Even when I prepare for these videos, it's hard, guys. Assignment to undeclared variable controls, because I have to do this. There we go. Okay. Cool. Look at us. So now we have controls. Look at how much functionality we have already. We can like rotate, we can pan, okay? We can zoom in and out. Yeah, we can pan, and this works with touch. So like this is amazing, guys. Like this is pretty amazing. But there's a couple of problems, a couple things we might want to fix. So number one, it starts off like pivoting around the very edge of the board. So like this is like super awkward, right? So we can pan it to here. But I mean, the other thing is like I can pan like all the way over here. And like now I've totally lost control of my checkers board. Like to the point I just need to refresh the page because I've totally lost control of it. So really, in reality, what I want is I don't really want users to be able to pan. I want it to be centered on the edge of the board. And it could be cool if the controls were a little bit smoother. There's something super simple you can add called damping. I will show you how to do it in just a second. I actually like the sheer responsiveness of this, but if you want to add the damping, I'll show you how to do it because, again, it's just like free functionality. So might as well show you how to turn it on, and if you like it, keep it. If you don't, ditch it. So yeah, so the first thing is how do we set what we want the target to be? So first off, it starts by targeting the origin. That's nice. You know, we could move our checkers board so it's centered about the origin, but I actually like the way we have it because basically like the square numbers, it just kind of counts up on the X and Z, and it sort of builds out from that point. So I don't mind it being like that. The user doesn't know that's the origin, aside from the fact that our camera points to it. Otherwise, the user doesn't care. So what I'd actually rather just do is have our thing look at the center. Now the problem is you might go like this. Okay, you might go like this. I think it's actually 4.5 because it's 10, but it's 9 because we start at 0. So you might go like that, and you'll notice that like it doesn't do anything, right? So setting camera look at, that was helpful before we had the orbit controls, but now it like kind of appears to do nothing. So we can just go ahead and remove that. What we want to do is after we get the controls in here, what we want to do is we're going to go controls.target.set. And that's where we could set it to be 4.5, 0, and 4.5, like that. And see. So super awkward jump there because it started off in the one spot, but then you know it kind of went in the middle. But now, like I'm orbiting the middle of the checkers board, right? We can see there's this point here, and it clearly kind of spins around it. Cool. So we can still pan and like get ourselves a little out of line, but we start pretty much exactly where we want to be, except we don't start there, right? There's like that awkward, it fixes us as soon as we do whatever. So all we need to do to fix that is do a quick controls.update. And we're going to move that call into our rendering function later. But so now we start like where we're supposed to be, and everyone's pretty much happy. But there's a couple other things. So I can look at the bottom of the board right now. Probably not ideal for my checkers game. I mean, kind of harmless, I guess. And the other big thing is the panning, right? Like, there's really no reason I should need to pan. Like, zooming and going like this should be sufficient. If I'm anywhere other than the middle of the checkers board, it just feels awkward. So what I want to do is I want to disable panning. So I'm going to go, we'll do it before the update call. Controls.enable pan is going to be equal to false. So now I can't pan. It doesn't matter. The shift hold does nothing, as does right click. Both of these were panning before. So now I can zoom and move around. Like, this is pretty good, but I still have that issue where I can look at the bottom of the board. So that's one kind of remaining issue. So how do we fix that? Well, there's something called max polar angle. So you'll notice when I go all the way to the top, I can't go further, but I can go all the way to the bottom, right? So there's some sort of limit here, but it's just not quite where I want it. So the minimum angle is 0, and the maximum angle is math.pi, right? So I can kind of take it like a full, I guess it's 180, right? But I only want to really be able to take it to about here. Like, I'm cool if I can see the board like head on, but like I don't want to be able to see the other side of it ever. So what we do with that is we go controls.max polar angle, and by default it's set to math.pi. We do math.pi divided by 2 for our case, but you can set it to whatever you want. And now, you know, I can only ever see the top of the board. Like, I can go totally sideways with it, but I can't ever get to that bottom of the board. So that's probably for the best. We don't ever really want people going to the bottom of the board, and they can't ever lose the board. They can zoom out like really bad, so that's kind of awkward. We could set a maximum zoom too, but I think for the time being, I'm not going to. You could set, you know, a max zoom too, because like I can zoom in like super awkwardly high. Get a really, really detailed look at that checkers board. But that's a little awkward too. But I think I'm going to leave those two alone for now. The last thing I'm going to show you how to do is enable damping, and then I'll show you where you can find all the options for the controls, because I seem to magically have the defaults in my head, which I have memorized them, that's true. But where did I get this information? Because the documentation is a little sparse, but I'll show you how to find it. But let's enable damping first. So what damping is it basically just smooths everything out. So as soon as I stop moving the mouse here, there's no like, it doesn't continue on, you know? Like, think of like a scroll view in iOS. Like, you flick your finger and then it just keeps going a little bit and it feels all smooth. Whereas this is like all instant. I can move it like super rapidly. Yeah, I like it because it feels really, really responsive to me. And it doesn't feel like it does anything like when I get the view I want, I get exactly that view. I don't get anything else. But you might want to turn damping on, so I'll show you how to do it. The trick with damping is you need to take this controls.update, which you may or may not have even done before, and you need to stick it in your animate function. Whoops. That's fine. So you stick it in your animate function, and then you go controls.enable damping equals true, and watch free functionality work. Look at this magic. See how like now it kind of keeps going even after my cursor stops moving? You can see that, right? And like I can only move it like so fast. Like it doesn't quite want to move at that rate. But I can like spin it. Spin the checkers board. Boom, boom. So I don't know, some people might like this. I think it has a tendency to feel unresponsive if I make quick movements. But it's kind of fun. Again, like I said, it's free functionality, so determine what you want and just go from there. So the last thing I'll show you is how to find all the options. So the first thing you want to do is head over to the Three.JS GitHub repository. I mentioned this earlier in the video. So you want to click the examples folder, and then you want to go JSM controls. And this is also where you'll download it. So you can see the other controls that are available here, just in case you're interested. And then you go over to orbit controls, and this shows you all the options. So if you aren't using the CDN and you're hosting the file yourself, what you do is you go over to raw and then you do a save page as, and that's how you get the orbit controls, and then you include them like you would any other script. So you can see all the options here: enabled, this is the target, right? Min distance, max distance. So this is that max polar angle, so you can see that's how I knew the default was that. Min polar angle. This is the side-to-side angle, so you'll notice like it eventually, because I stopped, but like I can infinitely spin this. I don't get stopped. Whereas I get stopped here and I get stopped here, but like side to side, it's fine. I never get stopped. So I mean, for me, for my purposes, that makes sense. There may be times you want to restrict that though. You can enable or disable zooming. You can change the speed of it. You can enable or disable rotating. You can enable or disable panning. You know, so it's basically, it's all there for you to determine all the settings that you want. So you can see all the settings, their defaults. You could set a max zoom, so I could zoom out to maybe there and decide that's as far as I want to let someone go. It's really the world is your oyster with these. They provide a lot of built-in functionality. Super great tool, depending on what you're building. So I've already talked to you guys for way too long. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video on orbit controls, and tune in next time for importing models from Blender. I'll catch you guys in the next video. It has been Ryan on the Syntax Byte. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my other videos.